The South African Revenue Services has announced key dates for the 2026 filing season, alongside a set of system changes aimed at making tax submissions straightforward and faster for individuals. For more on this, we're joined by a partner and head of strategic engagement and compliance at Tax Consulting South Africa, Jashwin Baijoo. Jashwin, good evening. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. You've had an opportunity to go through a number of the changes that SARS had introduced, where they theme things like less capturing and more profile data, or pre-filled data rather, making auto assessments a lot easier. I've certainly benefited from the headache of having to manually go through that and benefiting from the speed and efficiency of an auto assessment. Take us through some of the changes, system changes that have been introduced this year and why those are important.
Good evening, and thanks for having me on tonight. So probably one very important system change that does not have as wide of an impact as that of individual tax returns is SARS's automated trust admin penalty imposition. And the reason I say that is as of May this year, SARS have now implemented for outstanding tax returns on a trust, the same system that we have for businesses, where you have an administrative penalty ranging between 250 Rand and 16,000 Rand per return per period outstanding. What is interesting is with the system automations still being in pilot phase, we have actually picked up that instead of just looking at recent returns, SARS have been looking at 2024 and 2025, but going as far back as 2016 on the trust non-compliance and imposing these administrative penalties for outstanding returns. On an individual front, a little bit less exciting, so to speak, but due to an excessive amount of system automations, your filing will be easier, seamless, aligning with SARS's strategic objectives. And obviously bear in mind that filing season does close on the 23rd of October, 2026. But when it comes to any sort of auto assessment, it is still imperative that even though the form itself is populated from data SARS have derived and is available, and your IRP5 and your medical aid certificates, etc., it is absolutely essential that as the individual taxpayer, you still check those figures to ensure accuracy and then confirm it by submitting that return.
Yeah, let's talk about some of the other changes. A clearer guidance on residency status. This typically affects South Africans, I would assume, working abroad.
Correct. So clearer guidance on residency status. Well, for one, SARS have updated their systems to allow the cessation of tax residency by either physical presence or by selecting ordinarily resident, meaning as a South African, you are no longer ordinarily tax resident in South Africa. That is a system upgrade that we saw a few months ago, and it has made things quite a bit easier. Now, when we talk resident, we've obviously got your South African tax residents that live and work in South Africa, category 1. We've then got your South African tax residents that spend significant time abroad, working abroad, known as your expats. And then you've got your non-tax residents, who are individuals who have either seized their tax residency formally through a financial immigration process and are no longer linked to South Africa's residency system, or they are foreigners who were never resident in South Africa to begin with. And those are your 4 broad categories.
Yeah. Importantly, there's some changes on medical aid selection as well. Talk to us about what impact that will have.
So in terms of your medical aid selection, the changes are more in regards to the rebate. And the reason for that is historically, your medical aid rebate has been significantly smaller. Now, what we saw, and you'll recall in the budget speech, was we saw quite a few pro-taxpayer changes. But as we've seen with SARS over the years, it really is always a give and a take. So as an example, the give was increasing the single discretionary allowance from 1 million to 2 million. But there will be a take somewhere along the line. Another give was increasing the compulsory VAT registration threshold.
Yeah, and lastly and importantly, Are these changes sufficient in improving tax compliance, the tax compliance coefficient, which is something that SARS is desperately trying to improve? And I mention this because they got an extra allocation in the last budget cycle for exactly the improvement of that efficiency.
Correct. So in terms of SARS's last compliance program report, they, especially on VAT, their voluntary compliance index has increased. So we've seen a positive there. We've seen an increase on the collections as a direct result of those voluntary compliance programs. So in terms of the automations, remember, this is kind of the precursor and the start of SARS Modernization 3.0, which is their current strategic AI-driven vision for the future of tax compliance. And we've seen it many times that when compliance is easier, there are more people that are willing to do it, because human nature is to not necessarily do what is difficult, but when it is easy, you will do it willingly.
And is this why WhatsApp communication introduction by SARS is perhaps an important innovation?
Absolutely. And taking it a step beyond that, we actually saw this a few months ago, that letters of final demand, something that was historically uploaded on e-filing. But I mean, you and I, the ordinary taxpayer, we don't check our e-filing every single day. And then it went to a place of sending SMSs. But again, people don't really read SMSs because, well, as a method of communication, it's pretty outdated. And then SARS started sending out what could only be described as WhatsApp broadcast messages. You know, whether taxpayers had compromises in place and debt write-offs and payment arrangements, etc. But if they picked up any liability, they were receiving this WhatsApp. And initially, at the first few hundred, probably thought it was a scam.
Yeah.
Until it was actually verified and validated.
Yeah. Well, I guess one has to be a little bit vigilant on the verification of that communication. As you mentioned, some people thinking it might be a scam. Of course, we know phishing is still quite popular and seemingly made its way onto WhatsApp as well. Jashwin, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Jashwin Baijoo is the Head of Strategic Engagement and Compliance at the Tax Consulting South Africa.